To get started, guess who's on the show? Dr. Neal Barnard. So fasten your seatbelts because we're going to learn and grow. So it's time to dance, Dr. Barnard. And now that I know you have so much rhythm, I expect really smooth dancing. Here we go. You know where I'll be right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show, the purpose of the show is to provide a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening friend, will feel empowered to learn a new truth and dare living the life of your dreams. And for those of you who love music and are music fans, I just want you to know that you may want to put your finger on the dial and have my number programmed today, because we're giving a CD today by Dr. Neal Barnard. Yes, you heard me correctly. Dr. Neal Barnard is a talented composer and musician. Not only is he all those things, he's also a doctor, psychiatrist, you name it. So I want to ask you, the number is 407-373-5959. And we have his latest CD called Carbon Works, and it's also featuring Dr. Neal Barnard, which we're going to be talking about this, as well as learning the benefits of music with the brain. So do you have Alzheimer, dementia, memory loss? Is there someone in the family that has Alzheimer, memory loss, dementia? Well, we've discussed how nutrition plays a key role when it comes to brain health. But what about music? And so this is what we're going to be talking today with world-renowned New York Times bestselling author, teacher, and activist, Dr. Neal Barnard. And as I said, he comes on the show, we talk about nutrition, and we talk about different ways to heal. But I gave it away already. He is also a talented musician. And this is a side of him that I've never had on the show, that we've never discussed on the show. So now we're going to intertwine the benefits of music with the brain and why. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. Neal Barnard is here to do just that. Welcome back, Dr. Barnard, to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show.
Great to be back with you, Lillian.
Yes. So I'm telling you, share a little bit about your background, but this time, talk about the background, your story, about how music has become such a key role in your life.
Oh, well, thank you for asking about that. We've talked about medicine, and I went to the George Washington University School of Medicine here in Washington, D.C., and that's really consumed my life. But I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and for anybody who's ever been there, or well, if you haven't been there, maybe you saw the movie, but my parents had the idea that any civilized person ought to study music and ideally play a couple of instruments. So I was sort of chained to my piano and cello as a kid growing up, so to speak. And I never really left that behind. And then I took up the guitar when the Beatles came through, and I decided that was really it. And even when I was in medical school, I was a hardworking student, but at night I would have a group and we'd play at the clubs and that kind of thing. And I always stuck with it. And I have to tell you, I never really thought about, well, I guess we thought about the power of music sort of culturally. We all like it. But I never thought about why is that and what's it actually doing in the brain, and could we even perhaps harness that power and use it? And so that's really what we've been doing. But it all started with this idea that my parents had when we were little kids, that we ought We got to be more civilized.
And how many instruments do you play?
Well, the ones that have stuck with me are keyboards and the guitar is my main thing. So,
did I hear that you also play the cello?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, exactly. And I have to tell you, I play the guitar like a cello. There's certain ways where you're supposed to do the vibrato in a proper way, and I don't. I do it like a classical musician, which, what the heck? Yeah.
Hey, listen, you know, you never know why we learn certain instruments, and why can't you cross, you know, whatever you would do with a cello, do with a guitar? I mean, who says you can't?
Yeah, that's really it. And then what hit us is we were doing some clinical research studies a few years ago, and everybody had type 2 diabetes and they were overweight, and we changed their diets. And we noticed that some people were having trouble changing their diets. And of course, I didn't think of music as having any role in any of this, except here's what happened. I decided that maybe these people who were so drawn to junk food and so forth, maybe they had too little of a brain chemical called dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about dopamine on the air before, because that's sort of the reward chemical. And so I did genetic testing on this large group of people, and we found that about half of them had a single gene that caused them to have not enough dopamine in their brain. So there's a lot of ways that you can get more dopamine, and one of which is junk food.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do it with alcohol. You can do it with illegal drugs, cigarettes. All these things cause more dopamine in the brain, but of course they have dangers. Well, there are healthy ways to get dopamine.
Yes.
You get dopamine by being with friends, and that's what you do so well, is that you bring support of the community. In fact, if you could brain scan everybody watching this show, the dopamine is actually firing in their brain just by their connection with you. Physical activity will do it, but music does it too.
Okay, and this is what our conversation is about. And the 7th caller or texter will win a free copy of Dr. Neal Barnard's CD, Carbon Works. And we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Barnard when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Ooh, good job, Dr. Barnard. So yes, and that is one of the things that I would love to talk about on the air today, which is those studies that show that music can produce the dopamine. And, you know, it's interesting. And I also want to talk about ApoE, and maybe I'll talk about it now because maybe it's not something that works with the show. This is the show between the show. And so I pulled out my ApoE because you talk about ApoE and the genetic component of this and that for dementia. And mine was E3 over E3.
Yeah. Good.
Is that good? Is that bad? Does it make any sense?
That's good. That's normal. Here's what people should know. And by the way, I don't necessarily recommend everybody get tested because sometimes testing is frightening.
Yes.
But here there is ApoE is a gene, and there's one called the ApoE epsilon 4 allele. And if you got one of those from, say, let's say dad gave you the E4, in the same way as you could get the gene for brown eyes or blonde hair or whatever, if you get that E4 from dad or from mom, your risk of getting Alzheimer's is tripled. If you got it from both parents, mom and dad, we call it E4, E4. Then your risk is 10 to 15 times higher. That's not you. Your parents gave you E3, E3. That's good. That means your risk of getting Alzheimer's is a lot lower than everybody else, just genetically.
Yeah.
Now, for all those people who happen to get tested and they discovered they got the E4 from one or both parents, and they're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Well, yes, sure, that's worrisome. However, it turns out that there are lifestyle changes that can bring your risk back down. And we're gonna cover that in the show, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it has to do with what you eat and how much you lace up your sneakers and all those kinds of things. So your genes are good, but on the other hand, for those people where they're not so good, which is like super common, there are things that we can do to make sure that.
Okay, here we go. That's kind of loud, Brian. We go. Here we go. Thank you, Brian.
You can text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow with one another. Today's teacher is Dr. Neal Barnard. And what I love about this man is like He is a Swiss Army knife. He does it all. Started off as a psychiatrist and then later dove into the other side, the medical side of family medicine. Did you share a little bit about that journey for you, Dr. Barnard?
Yeah, well, initially, all I was interested in the world of medicine was the brain. That was the whole thing. That's the whole reason I went to medical school. And so I'm a board certified psychiatrist. However, in the course of all this work, I started to discover that we really need to tackle the things that are killing our patients. That's heart attacks and certain forms of cancer and diabetes and so forth. And those conditions are sort of 25% medicine and 75% behavior. Brain, the way the brain leads us to unhealthy habits that end up hurting us over the long run. So I've tried to integrate those two together so that we can use behavioral techniques to help us stay on the straight and narrow.
Yes. And so I just recently, as I do research on you and learn a little bit more about you when we're not together, I recently discovered your connection to the brain and Alzheimer's. Would you like to share a little bit about your father and your journey with your father?
Yeah, well, my father grew up in the cattle business at first and, ate his share of roast beef and so forth. But he didn't like the cattle business and he left and he went to medical school. And the family came back to Fargo and my dad became the local diabetes expert for the whole area. And he was a smart guy.
Wow.
But later in life, he started to not be himself. His memory was slipping. And he would forget names, he would forget words, and his emotional control was not so good. And my parents lived in I guess you call it a nursing home, but his care, he really needed more and more and more care because he just wasn't himself at all. And it wasn't as if he was in some happy oblivion. Mm-hmm. He was unhappy, he was miserable, he was feeling frustrated and fearful, but he couldn't remember things. And he ended up finally dying of a stroke. But if I got to tell you, Lillian, if I could go back in time and just say, here's what we've learned about how lifestyle changes can help. You never know if you can really change the course of a person's life, but I would sure as heck like to try. And so my mission now is to take this information and give it to other people who, like me, there's lots of people watching the show right now who go, that was my grandpa or my uncle or my mother, or whatever, and we need to be able to change their destiny too if we can.
Absolutely. And my father is going through similar changes of his brain that you talked about, but he's already had the stroke, but he's so healthy that he survived it. And so here's the deal. The brain requires much more than nutrition. It's a mind, body, spirit. And I think you, more than any doctor that I've ever interviewed, knows every aspect of the body. So let's talk about how music, you talked about dopamine at the beginning of the show. Let's talk about how music affects different aspects of our brain.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. You go into a surgical ward of a hospital, and everybody's nervous because they're going to have a hip replacement, and they know they're going to be out of work for 6 weeks, and they don't want it to hurt, and so forth. Everyone's nervous. So you can give them Valium-type drugs to calm them down. But researchers discovered that when people take those drugs, they are calmed, but they feel sometimes a little out of control of themselves. They don't feel that good. Yeah. So researchers started as a test using music and testing it against medicine. And they found that the music, if you pick it the right way, it has a more calming effect than the drugs do. Then, coming out of surgery, then what you do is you give people access to music that they pre-selected. And you don't tell them that you're doing this, but you're actually counting the pain pills that they're taking. And if you give them music, they take about 15% less of the narcotic painkillers that they were going to use otherwise. So if you don't give them music, they need more painkillers. If you give them music, they need less. And this was also done in the labor and delivery suite. When women are given birth, you ask them to rate their pain. And of course, it goes up and up and up as the birth process proceeds. You then give women, say, a massage all the way through, and they rate their pain less. Do it a third time. Now, no massage, but give them music. And music acts like a full body massage, reducing the pain in the birth process. Now, it doesn't eliminate it completely, but it's surprising to see what's happening, that the music isn't just in your ears. It goes into the brain and goes to the areas that modulate anxiety, pain, and people feel substantially better But the music has to be picked in the right way. It cannot, if bluegrass is not your thing, if hip hop is not your thing, don't play that music. It's got to be music that works with your pleasure center. And then we started looking at Alzheimer's disease. And I got to tell you, Lillian, this is the most amazing thing. If you look at the brain in Alzheimer's disease, it is actually being destroyed. It's shrinking. The cerebral cortex is dying away. However, it looks like the music recognition circuitry survives longer than the rest of it. So a person who cannot remember the name of their kids will remember the lyrics of a Herman's Hermits song they heard in 1966. And if you sing it to them and you make a mistake, they'll correct you.
Yes.
So medicinally, you can use that, A, as a way to make a connection. B, if you've got, let's say, grandpa gets agitated every afternoon and he's worried and he's pacing around in the nursing home, what you do is you give him music for about a half an hour just before that peak agitation time hits. And what you discover is that he's calmer during the time the music is there and afterward. But don't assume that you know what music is going to work. He probably always hated the Holly Ridge Strings playing the Beatles' greatest hits or something. In fact, maybe his dentist played that during his last root canal or something like that.
It's more amazing how we associate music, right?
Tell me about it. So what you got to do is either ask him or ask his relatives or whatever. What did he listen to when he was a teenager? What did he listen to when he was a young adult? Play that. And then you'll discover their smile comes on their face. They start singing along with it. And pretty soon, everything that counts in life has come back to them, which is their connectiveness, their ability to connect. So you can use it in that way.
Very good. Okay, so I'm getting this visual and how important music is for the brain. But there's other components that we do in music. We can sing, we can dance. Have they done any studies about that as well?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, the way these studies work is you use brain scanning technology, so you can actually look at the brain when sort of nothing's happening outside, and then you can play some music or do other things. And I got to tell you, it's frightening, the effect that things have on the brain. You can give cocaine, you can give alcohol, you can give tobacco, and certain brain structures light up. You can give junk food, and certain brain structures light up, and all those are dangerous. But you can give Beethoven, and you see the same parts of the brain will light up in the pleasure center of the brain. And the beauty of that is Beethoven doesn't have any calories at all, doesn't have any cholesterol, no bad fat in any of the symphonies, as far as I've been able to see. And where the brain lights up is when you're anticipating a musical peak, the brain will light up. And then when a certain part of the brain will light up. And then when you hit that peak, a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens lights up again a second time. So like the Hallelujah chorus, you're coming to this peak and you're feeling good, and the brain is saying, I'm with you 100%. And then when you hit that Hallelujah, another part of the brain just lights on fire. So you get a couple little dopamine squirts with every one of those parts of the music that go on.
That's amazing.
Nobody ever threw Beethoven off the stereo and went off for ice cream. The music really will keep their dopamine active.
Very good. Yeah, that's true. I've never seen anybody get up from a concert saying, "Man, I could use something right now, a smoke."
Right now, no, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. It's like we'd rather listen to the song. Okay, so does that work at any point of a stage of brain dysfunction? So if I am at my final stages of dementia where I can't even recognize anybody or even speak or eat or feed myself, can that still, the power of music, transcend that?
We don't know how far it will go.
Okay.
What we do know is that the parts of the brain, some parts of the brain function go fairly quickly. Word recognition, names. And in fact, you see this in a person who's totally healthy and they're 25 years old, but if they didn't sleep very well last night, or if they're really stressed, that's a time where you can't remember the name of that actor, what was the name of a movie, or you see somebody at the grocery store and you think, what's that? So that's really fragile. Names and words are very fragile. And when a person has Alzheimer's disease, that's the first to go. And then as time goes on, problem solving starts to go, but the music recognition part, it's almost part of what people sometimes call the reptilian brain. It's sort of the last to go. And because it doesn't require remembering logic or those kinds of things, it's much more of a visceral connection.
Okay.
So whether that will stay until the end, I don't know. But that does seem to be just about the most persistent part.
Interesting. Interesting. I just wanted to ask that question because you see all these patients that are in these lockdown facilities that I wonder if they are encouraging them or if they're playing music that will bring their brain function to like that little spark that you talk about.
Oh, well, they definitely should. And researchers have actually studied the anti-agitation effect of music. So you'll take people where, for example, you'll try to explain, don't worry, dinner will come here in a little while, or something like that, and they don't understand. Or you'll give them instructions like, let's go back to your room, and the words are getting lost. But those people will recognize music and will sing along with something that you start. And so you do get that connectiveness, and you also get the emotional response and the calming response too. And the agitation, all the signs of agitation diminish as well.
Okay, so let's talk about Carbon Works, the latest CD, latest album that you've, I think this is your fourth one, right?
This is my third one.
Third one. Okay, so I'm predicting a fourth one. That's basically what's happening.
Yes, I like your style.
Yes.
Carbon Works has been a lot of fun. Some just terrific musicians, and it started out with musicians I played with for a long time. I have a singer named Martha Roebuck, who she and her husband live in Virginia, not too far from here. She's just got this voice of an angel, and she and I have worked together for a really long time. But I started adding folks. I was out for a jog in Sacramento, and I was listening to a European radio station, and I heard an Italian singer who grew up in the Italian Alps. Her name is Naif, Naif. And I thought, what a voice. So I tracked her down and emailed her, and I made her come to the US, and she's come here a couple times and recorded with us. And Chris Thomas King, who was in the Coen Brothers movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, with George Clooney. Yeah. He plays this blues guitarist. Well, he is a blues guitarist. And he came through DC, and I couldn't believe him. I thought he was like fabulous. So I like grabbed his pants leg and I say, you cannot leave town. And so we went into the studio and we recorded some tracks. He's just great.
Which ones is he in?
He is in, I have this huge long piece of music called The End of the World,
yes,
which is 15 minutes of instrumental music where I have a string quartet pitted against a blues guitarist, or string quartet against a jazz duo, where I'm just combining these colors in the way I wanted to hear it, and I hope other people like it. But that's where Chris is. And then Naif sings a song called "Song for an Angel," where I wrote it in English, but we sat in the studio and she said, "Let's really add the emotion. I'm going to sing it in Italian," and that's what she did, and it's just like knockout beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so I thought we were going to be playing some of the music, but we're going to play the music when we return after the break. And for now, for those of you who would like a copy of Dr. Neal Barnard's third album, Carbon Works, you be the seventh caller or texter. Please leave a message, caller or texter, call 407-373-5959, and you will get your own copy of Carbon Works. And we're going to continue our conversation about the brain and music when we return worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. So, Dr. Barnard, I'm so grateful to be able to share your music with my listening friends, share the motivation, because I didn't understand your talent until this. I mean, I don't know if anybody can see this right back there. It's on white on a very light gray, which shows your modesty, first of all. And I took my magnifying glass. Where the heck is my magnifying glass? Here it is. This is a true story, Dr. Barnard, and I'm sharing. Okay, so I took and I'm like, okay, what does that say? So I'm looking at this with my magnifying glass. You wrote most, if not, well, all but one of these songs, right?
Well, I wrote them all, actually. There's two exceptions that I mentioned before the break, that Naif translated one of my songs into Italian.
That's what it was.
Okay. For that. And then there's a song on there that's in Vietnamese, and
love it.
It's the first few seconds are an old traditional Vietnamese song, but then our group kind of rocked it up, combining those two sensibilities.
It's so eclectic. There's like, I think once I figured out your style, then you play something different that I'm like, wow, this is like, if I were to explain what kind of music this is, I would say everything. You have everything in there. And so what was your motivation? I mean, how is it that you come up with this music? Oh, here we go. Here we go. We got the music back. So perhaps maybe we can start talking and shift gears now and talk about, well, first I need to talk about my social media, and then we'll reintroduce you.
At 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
And welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where you can hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I'm your host, Lillian McDermott, and I'm so excited that we get to learn from such wonderful teachers. Today's teacher is Dr. Neal Barnard, who happens to be an incredible musician. Not only, and I wasn't aware that you were listening to some of the music. It's called Louder Than Words, one of my favorite songs. Actually, they're all my favorite songs on the CD. And if you are the 7th caller or texter, you will get a copy of Dr. Neal Barnard's 3rd album CD called Carbon Works. And the number is 407-373-5959. I want to encourage you to learn a new truth about your health, which is that it doesn't matter what your DNA brought you, because only 3%, maybe small, less than that. I'll say less than 5%, which is very little, is a part of who you are today. You inherit all your parents' DNA, but you can turn it on and turn it off on the way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you act. And look at music. Look how music, that's something just as small as music, can change your life. This is called taking 100% responsibility, not shaming or blaming or faulting. You weren't dealt a bad deck of cards. You've just inherited the way your family eats, the way those wonderful recipes that Dr. Barnard talks about from Fargo. And so I want to encourage you, my listening friend, to learn this new truth that you can turn on and turn off the genes in your body. And so a place that you can start for taking responsibility is to become a subscriber of the Lillian McDermott Radio Show. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com, become a subscriber, and make sure you check out my sponsors while you're there. And because of my sponsors, the show is on the air. So figure out a way that you can support them the way they're supporting us. I want to encourage you to check out my social media, all my on-demands. You can watch this conversation on YouTube as well. So I am excited that we're able to offer gifts, and one of them is Dr. Neal Barnard's CD called Carbon Works. Let me tell you, this man is truly a Swiss Army knife of everything that is good and talented. And so you've been able to hear this along the way. So Dr. Barnard, thank you so much for everything that you do. You wrote every single song on this CD, and you've done it beautifully, masterfully, and beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
It was a fun project.
Yes, it's more than a project. To me, it's like you pour yourself out into the sheet, into the music. How does this process happen for you?
Well, sometimes music is a little bit of a different language. You know, we try to approach each other logically sometimes, but I have to say there are times when, in fact, almost all the time, logic doesn't play a particularly big part in human behavior.
Sure.
And so sometimes I'll use music as a way to reach people in their heart or in their gut sometimes, or some other body part. That song, Louder Than Words, that you mentioned was actually inspired. I was traveling once, and I happened to come across a little stray dog who was terrified. Mm-hmm. Obviously had been in somebody's house at one point, but had been dumped. And you know how they get rocks thrown at them and so forth. And this dog was just terrified. And I tried to approach the dog, and the dog would just run. And luckily, with some friends, we managed to capture the dog and get the dog in a home where she gradually just settled down and was fine. But in the course of doing this, I found myself thinking that there's somebody inside there. This isn't just a piece of fluff with legs. There's somebody inside there, and that's true of animals in general. And so the song Louder Than Words is sort of about seeing the being within. And if you think about it with people, we have all kinds of preconceived notions about other people. But at the base of it, everybody has the ability for joy. They have the capacity to suffer as well. And if we can kind of look beyond superficial things and see kind of that heart that's beating inside, sometimes that can be louder than the words that we might use.
Absolutely. I had a little dog named Max, and he was only, his name is actually 5 Pound Max, because I wanted a dog that was 5 pounds max, so he ended up, that's ended up being his name, Max. And when he ascended, that's the only way I can put it. When he ascended, I wrote an article called "Everything I Learned About Unconditional Love I Learned from Max."
Yeah.
Because, animals, you can torture them, but they have an ability to love that is unbelievable. And I have this theory, and for those of you who don't share this theory, it's just a theory. I'm not saying it's true or not. I believe that if we were to come back and we get reincarnated to learn the lessons until we get to go to heaven and go back and learn the lessons, I believe our last stop before we get to heaven is we come back as dogs or animals, so that we can truly learn unconditional love. So what do you say about that? The comparison of animals with this true, just helpless gratitude that if we're good to them, they're happy.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to this, and you see the converse as well. When you look at people who have done terrible things to other people, mass murders and so forth, you very often find that it started with abusing animals. In fact, just recently there was a mass shooting in Texas.
Yes.
And that person who did this had originally, he had abused his wife and his infant child before that, and before that had been abusing all these animals. So it very often starts out that way. And there are so many ways that people mistreat animals. And I think as a youngster growing up in Fargo, we probably did all of them. We hunted and we raised animals to eat, and I experimented on animals in college and all these things that I now regret. But I'm trying to make up for lost time by spreading a little bit different view of things. And back to music. Sometimes we can speak logically about these things, but other times we can either write songs, or you can combine a song with a video. And in fact, Louder Than Words has a video that goes with it. And I'm hoping to touch a few people's hearts with that.
Well, you did touch my heart, because when you so generously sent me the CDs and some of the books that you've written, and I'm so grateful to you. I think I sent you an email telling you that your CD is now playing in my car every time I go into my car.
Oh, that's great.
So when I first listened, I was on my way to the gym, and I started listening to it, and I thought, okay, the next song is going to be kind of like, I try to picture what you were thinking when you were writing this. Well, at the time, I didn't know you were writing the songs. I just thought you were playing from music that you had picked up. Right. But later on, I found out. So then I got home after I was listening to your music at the gym. I came home and I YouTubed, because you had mentioned that you were on YouTube. So I Googled you, and I did the YouTube search. And when I saw Louder Than Words, and I saw your video about the little doggy and the cow, and you actually have a cow crying. How did you find that?
Yeah, it's true. Humans and cows both shed tears, and in that case, the song is sort of about sad things that happen. In that case, this is an actual cow being trucked off, and they're terrified, and they do shed real tears. But then in the very next scene, we show that the cows actually, where they're going is they're being freed. These were dairy cows that were every day of their life had to go through what they go through. But then they were freed into this big place. And it's funny, not only do they cry when they're sad, they jump around when they're happy, and they're so goofy looking. They're as big as a sofa, and they are not bovine ballerinas. I got to tell you, they are completely awkward. But to see them jump around together and say, "Hey, we're so happy," you just got to laugh and smile.
Well, the video is very touching, and I thought, I wasn't expecting this. When I was listening to Louder Than Words, I was not expecting little animals running around. And then I thought, yeah, animals can't speak. So their actions are louder than words. And, isn't it beautiful when you're in a moment, Dr. Neal Barnard, that you cannot speak, but people know exactly how you feel.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And there's another song on there that's called Samurai, which I don't know if you looked at.
Yes.
When we wrote it, it's a very aggressive kind of music. It's really hard hitting. But the video is the cutest little video you ever saw. It's a little sweet little girl asleep in her bed, and she wakes up and suddenly there's a rock and roll band in her bedroom, and the guitarist gives her a sword, and she becomes a samurai who's cutting the chains to free her animal friends. And it's kind of tongue-in-cheek ridiculous and silly, but cute too. And then the rest of the songs are about other topics. I have some topics about, I did a couple of kind of hard-hitting songs about war that are a little kind of heartbreaking in a way.
Yeah.
But two of the musicians I work with were refugees from the Vietnam War. And they sing a traditional song, and then we take it and we kind of westernize it. But there's not exactly a happy ending there. It's because in their sense, human aggression is something that always has to be dealt with and always has to be contained. And in their case, they had to leave the country that had been theirs.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, we are friends and we work together, and we've made this hopefully beautiful thing together as musicians and as friends and colleagues.
So as I understand, Brian, as we leave for right now, we're listening to Louder Than Words, although you and I can't hear it, but I hope that you are tuning in now that you know the little story behind Louder Than Words, that your heart will smile as you know that it's a happy ending. And we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Neal Barnard when we return worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Remember, 7th caller or texter. Okay. Yeah, that was very touching. I believe, because I've had your CD for like a month. For some reason, I may have seen the little girl with the samurai sword and saying that. Which one in your music that you've written, that you've ever written, has been probably your what? Okay, I don't know what the VJSVBJ. What does that mean? Oh, my mic is on. You gotta tell me these things, Brian. I don't know. We're out. Anyway, what is the number one song that you say, I can't believe that I was inspired to write that?
Well, first of all, I got to say that the real peak moment comes not when I write it, because I think this is the way it's going to sound. The peak moment comes, you go in the studio, and then the musicians get together, and then you listen to what it really sounds like, and it is the most amazing thing. Actually, on my previous record, which was under the name Verdun, Verdun, there's a song.
What's it called? What's it called?
Verdun. I can send you that. There's a song called "Song to a Sparrow," which Martha sang it, and it's just a very pretty song. And it's about vulnerability, and it's about like when your kids leave and you just worry, are you going to be all right? You know, I hope you can kind of come back to the nest safely. It's that kind of feel. So anyway, that I thought was just, when she sang that, it just thought it was so beautiful. But I think she and all the musicians did great on all of these songs, I have to say. And if they didn't, we didn't put it on the record. So.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, the violinist is so beautiful.
Her name is Allegra Havens, and Allegra and I have been friends for a long time, and she is just out of this world. And the way she works with Martha, and the way she works with the Vietnamese musicians and everything, they all really meld together.
Yeah. I have a question for you, because, we're talking about music and the brain and how it lights up certain areas of the body or the brain. But then you hear about musicians that get Alzheimer's. So how do we justify that? How do we, people that are so talented and brilliant and gifted, they get Alzheimer's. So let's talk a little bit about that. And I don't know if we want to pour that over into the radio show.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things that can happen. One is the music is a good thing. As I said earlier, Beethoven has no cholesterol. That's all true. And so let's say you're studying your craft, and music, it really can be very helpful for the brain in so many ways. And so I'm a symphonic cellist, and I'm working really hard, and people do well. Okay, you take that very same person and you put them in a van or in a bus along with musicians, and you have them go in a different city every night, and have them stay up till 4 a.m, and then they're
Sleep.
subjected to drugs and alcohol and whatever food you eat on the road, and everybody's smoking around them. And sometimes if they get a little money in there too, then they can, all kinds of other bad habits can come into it. And then those people tend to live fast and die really young. And while they are performing, that is the healthiest time of their life.
Okay, so can you read what it says? So let's have that conversation on the air, because that's important too.
Mhm.
You can text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
And welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where I've lost total control here. So for those of you who are listening to the music that's playing, we can't hear it on our end, but I know that you can hear it. And that's the music of Dr. Neal Barnard. And he has been so generous to offer one CD for you to seventh caller or texter. You can call and text 7 times or 1 time. If you really want this song, this CD, it's called Carbon Works. And Carbon Works, let me tell you, it is unlike any album that you'll ever listen to. Just when you think, oh, I figured out his style or his genre or whatever, something else comes. It's like the gift that keeps on giving, Dr. Barnard. And so you and I were talking about the fact during the break that, that there are a lot of people that are very talented musicians that come down with dementia. One in particular that went big on his farewell tour was Glenn Campbell. He's the one that I'm thinking about mostly just recently. But I asked you, if the music is so good for the brain, why is it that still musicians get dementia or memory loss? And I loved your answer so much that I wanted us to have this conversation on the air.
Sure. Well, obviously, it should first be said that music isn't everything. You can still hurt yourself in many other ways.
Sure.
But music really is good for the brain. And you take a person, let's say they're playing with a symphony or whatever, and music really is demonstrably good for not only brain development, but also brain function preservation. However, you take that person who's been busily practicing and performing locally and so forth, then stick them on a bus and send them on tour with a whole bunch of other musicians. And suddenly several things happen. They're up every night till 4 a.m. They're around other people who are smoking and drinking. They themselves are going to fall into these habits in many cases. They're eating whatever food they get on the road. And then if you add a little bit of money into it, I'd like to say that money is only a great thing, but unfortunately, sometimes it allows us to get into other bad habits too. So alcohol, drugs, never sleeping, eating rotten food, smoking, it just takes an enormous toll on so many musicians, and so many of them really live fast and die young. And the healthiest time of their whole lives is that moment when they're on the stage. They're not doing anything bad other than just getting totally into their music. And that's not a person who says, wait a minute, let me stop now and shoot up. They don't. They're totally into the music part. But all the other parts of being on the road are so destructive. And the people who do the best are those who have managed to keep their balance in that. There are people like Tony Bennett who have been around for a long time and just keep kind of a sense of balance throughout all this. But unfortunately, not everybody has done that.
Yeah, that's true. And so that shows us how important, it's not just one thing that we do, it's all the little things that we do. And what I'm hearing you say, that sleep, when you're on that bus, that sleep is so crucial. And we've talked about the hours between 10 and 2, to go to sleep before the hour of 10, but that's the time that explain what happens to our body between those hours.
Yeah, most important thing of all, my most important medical implement is the clock. At 10 o'clock, if you go to sleep, it's better than just about anything else. So no matter how good the TV drama is that you're watching, if you can click the remote off, go to sleep at 10, it's great. At 10 o'clock, your brain, in those early hours, your brain is involved in what's called slow wave sleep. That name comes from EEG recordings of the brain, and the waves are really slow. And that's when the brain is integrating words and facts that happen during the day. It's sort of like your brain filing things away to find them later. Mm-hmm. And then after that, as morning starts to approach, dreams are more and more frequent, and that's REM sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain is integrating emotions because, our dreams often are infused with funny kind of emotions, and also physical skills like playing an instrument or golfing or tennis are integrated during that time. Okay, so you stay up all night because you're a musician or you're a medical intern or you're a radio host who's on at night or whatever. And what you discover is that you're just you're not as good the next day. If you were up all night, your memory starts to sputter a little bit and your emotional control isn't quite so good. You can get a little grumpy or sometimes a little giddy or somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
If we get that good night's sleep and we can allow the brain to do the filing away and the integrating of these things, then you're on a more even keel after that.
Very nice. Very nice. So I would love to be able to hear, Brian, I'm hoping that you can play some of the music now so that we've set up Louder Than Words. I just want to see if we can play it again so that we can hear it. And I promise you I won't talk this time. And for those of you, be the 7th caller or texter, 407-373-5959, and win your own copy of Carbon Works, is the work for Dr. Neal Barnard. Go ahead.
And I found words I could say. You trembling and all that you understand, and would you turn away?
And I was anticipating that, Dr. Barnard. My brain light up.
Oh, good. The dopamine is firing in my head.
It is. Wonderful. I absolutely love this song, but for those of you who are listening this song, this is like the only song like this, because every single song is different. You will feel like you've encountered you've gone into the symphony and you've sat there and they've played every single song you love. And that is what Carbon Works was like, I was totally taken aback. I will admit to you, Dr. Barnard, when you said, yeah, I play music, I did some CD, I said, okay, I'm going to listen to this and I'm going to be open-minded. And I heard the first song, and then I heard the second song and the third song, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is wonderful. Absolutely. Brian, I hear the theme song now. Oh, are we ready to go? Oh, I told you I lost control. Be the seventh caller or texter, 407-373-5959. You get your copy of Dr. Neal Barnard's Carbon Work. Thank you, Dr. Barnard, for everything that you do.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And to you, my listening friend, remember, music heals your spirit. Dance, sing, and feel the joy. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Okay. Totally out of control today. But thank you, Brian, for doing everything possible to make sure that our radio show people got to hear it. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I will also click some of the, add some of the videos on there so that you can also hear at least louder than words, but get your own copy of Dr. Neal Barnard's CD. This is really good. Do you have any CDs that is just instrumental?
Not the whole CD, but there are a few songs. I think 4 or 5 of the ones on that record are instrumental, and maybe on the previous ones. Who knows? I'll dig around. We'll see what we got.
Yeah. Will you guys be going on tour? Do you go on tour, or do you have different areas that you will be playing?
Oh, I would love to do that. We're really getting together when we record and when we do our videos and that kind of thing. We haven't done a tour.
Well, I know that if you do a tour, you will be in bed by 10 o'clock.
That's right. That's right. We're only going to play for people 85 years old and up. We're all going to be asleep by 9:30.
It's the early bird special. No,
Exactly.
Actually, it's really important. And, I always sacrifice my sleep to get things done. And I know that it is, that it is part of, even though, as you had mentioned, I have good genes, I'm pushing it. I am pushing it. Because
aren't we all? I'm with you. Nonetheless.
Yes. Well, Dr. Barnard, thank you so much for being a part of this broadcast and not only enlightening us from, a scientific perspective, but in an emotional way as well, because music touches us and touches our spirit in very deep ways. I sing contemporary Christian music, and that's my genre, but I love all music. And I'm just beginning to like country even. So I can even say that I'm beginning to like all music. And so you've been very helpful with teaching us about music today. Thank you.
Great. Well, we open the windows, we see what flies in.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to our next conversation. And
likewise, me too.
Okay, let's pick the topic before we go. Thank you for watching today, and I hope you learned something new. And I hope you will also pick up a copy of Carbon Works by Dr. Neal Barnard.